Welcome back to Pirkei Avot. We're coming into the third sentence, the third part of Hillel's famous phrase, which basically asks us the question, if not now, when? An interesting question, and like so many things, depending on where you put the punctuation or the emphasis, you can create a different sense of meaning of the text. And in fact, I think that this sentence is no different. If not now, when gives us a sense of urgency. And I think traditionally the text is, if not now, when? Let's do it now. Let's make sure that what we're about to do is not postponed. It's too important to put off to another day. But there's another way to look at that, which is, if not now, comma, when? Which is to say, timing may be, in fact, a critical portion of our success in accomplishing the work that's at hand. And those two things are what create the tension and the urgency. And for the baby boomer, I think that it makes a ton of sense to look at the judicious and prudent approach to how we say and we do things. I think many of us realize it is all in the timing. What we do, or the success of what we attempt to do, is often a function of how we say it and the context in which we say it. And the easiest one to think about would be, well, if you've ever had an adolescent child, there are times when they will tune you out just because they hear the sound of your voice. Picking and choosing our battles become very, very important. Deciding what's really important and worth taking a stand on versus those things which maybe don't need to become fights, don't need to become headbutts at every opportunity where you say black, the immediate response is white. We can lead, we can guide, and part of guiding is also knowing when to step back. Letting those young people who are struggling with their sense of independence and struggling with what they understand to be true, give them the chance to figure it out for themselves. Let them stumble. Don't let them fall and let them hurt themselves, of course, but let them take those tentative steps as confidence builders, as an idea that, in fact, you trust them enough to do things as they see appropriate, and be there to guide. Be there also to be the fallback, not with an I told you so, but with the wisdom of not only your own experience, but also with the wisdom of understanding that allowing them to do things is, in fact, a way of showing them your love and your support. On the other side are the parents. How often have we needed to think about those really, really difficult discussions, whether they be something as simple as, Dad, we need to talk about your driving. In other words, that time when we know at some point that it's no longer safe for our parents, and we actually have to step into the role of parent ourselves and say, you know what, it's time for us to have you surrender the keys. Now, surrender the key versus take away the car key is a very, very different kind of a conversation. And when that occurs is very, very important. To talk to your parents as though they are children, to infantilize them, goes right to the heart of the ego issue, goes right to that very, very difficult place where they're already struggling with their own sense of independence and their loss of independence. So the ability to respond to that in a positive way, to hear the message of a very difficult conversation, becomes a question of timing. When you say that, how you say that, are both critical to whether or not, in fact, they will be heard. And for us, that becomes the key. So that is the sense that, if not now, when, becomes the opportunity for us to be reflective and not just react in the moment, but to understand and consider the person with whom we're dealing, the kind of a message that we're trying to get across, and our capacity to actually do that with success. But then again, there's the more traditional opportunity to understand what Hillel is talking about when we say, if not now, when, that urgency to step up to the plate, to do it now, as opposed to postponing for some time off in the future. Either that's procrastination or it's active avoidance. Whatever it may be, there is that sense that to just put it off for the sake of putting it off, or a lack of desire of dealing with the issue, is not something that is going to be successful. And in fact, postponing a problem tends only to make the problem a little bit more difficult when you finally do get around to actually figuring out how to grapple with it, or at least realizing the need to confront. So Rabbi Tarfon, as he has shared with us in 2:16, says even if we can't complete the work, we are not able to desist from the work. Very famous phrase, which exhorts us to the idea that we need to engage. It may be a project which is unfinished, but nonetheless, we need to engage. And in fact, that is not in and of itself, the inability to finish is not in and of itself reason to not start. With that, Rabbi Tarfon also said, repent as though it is the last day. And that's not exactly a doom and gloom, but in fact, what I think Tarfon is saying, which is so insightful, is that repenting as if it's the last day, in other words, the urgency to get started, that life is a gift and our time together is a gift. As baby boomers, I think that we understand that in intimate ways, as painful as that might be for many of us. But sometimes that can be really hard to remember. And in those times when things are going and spinning out of control, or it just seems like things are nuts, you need to sort of take a deep breath and take stock when you're feeling exasperated, and remember that instead of fighting, instead of arguing, instead of letting emotions rule the day, we need to be able to step back and understand the bigger picture, that at some point in time, we really do appreciate the fragility of life, and that we as baby boomers understand at some level that things like health and family and fortune, they're all precious gifts, and they're all potentially fleeting. So we don't want to waste time postponing until tomorrow. We want to get started today. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we regret the things that we didn't do. In fact, what we want to be able to do is look back and treasure the time that we spent and the meaning that it creates. We will conclude our conversation with regards to Hillel and now move into a conclusion and wrap-up of